There was nothing about the jungle that welcomed strangers. It breathed a kind of damn hostility, an ancient intelligence that whispered through vines and waited in the thorns. The trees stood so thick and tall they devoured the light, and when the wind moved, it didn't rustle, it hissed. To the untrained, it was a death trap. To Earth's last defenders, it was home. Reyna adjusted her camo cloak. The ghillie netting soaked through from the humid air. Her face, streaked in green and ochre, blended into the underbrush. She didn't speak. Words were unnecessary here. She watched. She listened. Every leaf had a language, every footfall a fingerprint. Somewhere above, a droning hum echoed through the treetops, an alien surveillance unit too sleek, too precise to belong in this feral domain. Her breath slowed, eyes narrowing as the sound shifted eastward. It hadn't seen her. Yet, a soft rustle to her right didn't alarm her. Mira approached, silent as a shadow, face masked with mud, eyes gleaming with grim resolve. She crouched beside Reyna, nodding once. They didn't need conversation. Trust ran deeper than orders. They had bled together. Coalition dropships. 3 clicks out. Heavy infantry, Mira murmured, barely above breath. ETA, 20 minutes. Reyna's jaw tightened. Too soon. They're sweeping faster than expected. Either they're desperate or they know something. Reyna gave a sharp hand signal. Mira melted back into the undergrowth. The enemy wasn't merely coming. They were descending with righteous certainty, as if Earth had already lost. But Reyna knew better. She had seen what happened to the overconfident. The jungle had a way of humbling even the mightiest. They called themselves the Galactic Coalition of Unified Worlds. Noble words for an empire built on resource greed and cultural erasure. Earth wasn't the first to fall into their sight lines, just the first to resist with such ferocity. Officially, Earth had already been declared pacified. The orbital media feeds showed cities rebuilt, cooperation restored. What they didn't show were the jungles. What they didn't count on were the ghost vipers. Reyna wasn't born a soldier. Once, long ago, she had been a botanist, fascinated by the aggressive evolution of rainforest ecosystems. But when the skies filled with fire and the cities screamed beneath metal feet, she adapted. Survival wasn't profession anymore. It was the only language left. By the time she reached the hideout, the others were already in position. Kanoa sat cross-legged by a map, drawn into the dirt with charcoal and bone. His hands moved with precise gestures as he coordinated with the scouts through encrypted earpieces. A former hacker-turned-tactician, Kanoa was always 2 steps ahead, his mind dancing through possibilities with frightening ease. Tala, the youngest of them, stood guard near the perimeter. Despite her age, her eyes had seen more carnage than most soldiers 3 tours deep. She carried herself with the weight of vengeance, a sister lost in the first purge of their home village, a fire that never stopped burning behind her gaze. Naya was sharpening her machete, her expression blank, but every stroke against the whetstone told a story of quiet rage. She had once been part of Earth's official defense militia, one of the last in effect when she realized the global command had surrendered Earth's sovereignty in exchange for illusionary peace. Betrayal had hardened her, but loyalty had saved her. Reyna knelt beside the map. Coalition approaching from the East Quadrant. Heavy infantry. They're sweeping fast. Kanoa raised an eyebrow. How heavy? Too heavy for this early. That's not recon. That's intimidation, Naya said, pausing mid-stroke. They're showing teeth, Reyna agreed, which means they're close to something they don't understand. The temple ruins? Kanoa suggested. No, us. A silence passed through the group. Not fear, just understanding. The central conflict was no longer about land or mineral rights. It was ideological. The coalition couldn't comprehend defiance from a primitive backwater planet. Their systems ran on submission. Anything else was error. Reyna pointed to 3 fallback points. We bleed them here, here, and here. Lead them through the wasp nests. Snare the exosuits with root traps. Delay their march. We keep the heart of the jungle safe. What about the uplink node? Mira asked. We still haven't located their signal base. Without that, Reyna cut her off. We're not ready for direct assault. But if we weaken their front line enough, they'll fall back. We'll buy time. Naya stood, stretching slowly. Time for what? For the others to rise, Reyna said. No one laughed, because somewhere in the shadows, other cells like theirs were waiting, watching, preparing. The resistance wasn't a single scream. It was 1,000 silent blades, sharpened by loss and driven by memory. Kanoa made final adjustments to their jamming frequencies. Tala passed around repurposed detonators shaped like fruit pods, innocent to the untrained eye. Mira uploaded a loop terrain map to confuse enemy drones. Each movement was practiced, precise, the kind of readiness that came from knowing one mistake meant annihilation. Reyna allowed herself a moment of stillness. She studied her team, each scar, each sorrow, each unspoken loyalty, and felt the way of command pressed deeper into her spine. These weren't soldiers. They were the Earth's rage made flesh. The jungle thickened as they spread out. Vines tangled above like the fingers of ancient gods, and the ground was a soft, deceptive sponge. Reyna took position near a ravine where roots ran like skeletal veins, camouflaged in silence. Within minutes, the buzz of machines grew louder. The coalition arrived in formation, polished, gleaming, efficient. Mechs towered above foot soldiers, their heads swiveling with mechanical calculation. They moved like invincible titans, confident in superiority. But they didn't see the sleeping traps, didn't smell the death woven into the leaves. A foot soldier stepped too close to a mossy boulder. It hissed open, revealing fanged jaws, bioengineered by Mira to mimic native fauna. One scream, one crunch, and the jungle swallowed the body whole. Panic rippled through the squad. Reyna fired once, a silenced dart laced with venom extracted from the crimson pit viper. Another coalition soldier dropped, convulsing. Myra's hacked drone triggered an illusion, heat signatures everywhere. The enemy scanners lit up with false targets. Confusion deepened. Then the jungle moved. Tala triggered the first snare line. 2 mechs toppled into the ravine, their cries twisted by the sound dampeners. Explosions blossomed beneath foliage. Fire danced among leaves. Chaos erupted. Still, the coalition fought back. Their plasma rifles lit the night like angry stars. Trees exploded. Smoke churned. For every invader that fell, another pressed forward. Reyna regrouped with Naya and Kanoa near the 3rd fallback point. Myra's voice crackled in their comms, distorted but urgent. They've deployed a secondary wave. Faster units. They're triangulating our signals. We need to move now, Kanoa warned. Reyna checked her remaining gear. Only 3 charges left. Minimal ammo. Time was thinning like breath in smoke. We hold, she said. But we hold. Because this wasn't about killing every enemy. It was about becoming the myth they feared. If they vanished now, the coalition would regain confidence. But if they stood, defiant, rooted like the jungle itself, they would be remembered. The final wave surged forward, exosuits gleaming with adaptive armor. Reyna stepped into their path, her cloak falling away, revealing the scars on her arms. Each one a story. The enemy hesitated. Just long enough. Kanoa detonated the charges. The ground erupted. Smoke, fire, and the deafening roar of Earth itself answered. When the dust settled, the clearing was empty. Only the jungle remained. And somewhere within it, The ghost vipers exhaled unseen, undefeated. Reyna didn't look back. She knew this was only the beginning. They would come again, but so would resistance. The jungle pulsed with tension, every leaf and vine holding its breath. For days now, Zeta 5 had entrenched itself deeper into the Amazon, building a mobile fortress of steel and dread at the edge of an ancient river. Sensor towers pierced the canopy like blasphemous spears, lights pulsing with synthetic vigilance. But the deeper they dug, the more uneasy they became, because nothing about this place welcomed them. Reyna crews studied them from a perch high above their latest outpost. Her muscles ached, her senses strained from constant movement and evasion, but her mind burned with a quiet fury. Zeta 5 had escalated the war. Their presence was no longer exploratory. It was personal. They had begun destroying entire swaths of jungle just to flush the ghost vipers out. Creatures burned. Trees collapsed. Riverbeds bled oil. It wasn't strategy, it was spite. Below her, Commander Vaylor's voice barked through static-filled speakers. His troops moved in response, scanning, sweeping, deploying, precision drilled into habit. Yet there was a stiffness in their posture now, a haunted undertone to their silence. They had lost 9 soldiers in 4 nights, and no one had seen what did it. That's what haunted them. Reyna's fingers brushed the hilt of her blade. It had been with her since she'd salvaged it from the wreckage of an orbital pod years ago. She'd honed it until it reflected nothing. Just like her, a movement stirred the branches to her left. Mira, the unit's tech specialist, slid beside her like a shadow. Small, lean, her eyes constantly calculating. They've started broadcasting distress signals, Mira whispered. Encrypted. Coalition's not answering. Reyna's brows furrowed. Why not? Mira smirked. Too embarrassed, maybe. Or too distracted. Rumor is there's trouble on their outer colonies. Insurrections. Reyna allowed herself a quiet breath. A spark of hope. Not for reprieve, but for leverage. If the Coalition's grip was slipping, they might just have a chance to do more than survive. They're deploying a scout crawler tonight, Mira continued. Semi-autonomous, heavily armored, terrain adaptive. Reyna didn't flinch. We'll break it. Already working on it, Mira said, then vanished back into the trees. That night, the crawler moved like a slow, metal serpent through the dark. It was 6 meters long, covered in reactive plating, and designed to detect heat signatures within 2 meters of solid earth. It cut through the forest like a plow, toppling small trees, ignoring the crunch beneath its massive treads. Inside, 3 Coalition officers monitored data, unaware that the jungle was watching them back. Reyna's team had prepared for this. They weren't engineers, but they were artists of disruption. Trip vines laced with sap that hardened into resin once exposed to air. Sonic lures that mimicked the calls of local predators. Misdirection was their masterpiece. The crawler's sensors began to glitch. One officer cursed, slapping at the console. Static danced across the screen. Then the machine halted. Lights blinked. Its internal cooling system kicked into overdrive. A smell, acrid, electric, began to fill the chamber. Outside, Kanoa and Tala were already in place. They moved with terrifying grace, weaving between roots and vines as if they were part of them. Tala carried a pulse jammer, its signal focused like a dagger. Kanoa's role was simpler: wait and strike. The crawler began to reboot. Inside, someone triggered an emergency override. Too late. Reyna's blade pierced the undercarriage. Not to destroy, just enough to open. Kanoa slid a gas pod inside, then retreated. The pod hissed once. Then silence. Minutes later, the machine powered down. 3 more soldiers gone. The Coalition's precious crawler neutralized. The jungle exhaled. Reyna didn't celebrate. She sat by the river, listening to it babble over stones and roots, as if the water knew how fragile moments like this were. Across from her, Tala sharpened her bone-etched arrows. "They're not adapting," Tala said. "They're panicking." "They will," Reyna replied. "Eventually. Vaylor's not a fool. That's what worries me." And it should have, because while Zeta 5 faltered in the field, Vaylor was crafting something new, something brutal. The next morning, the jungle awoke to screams. Reyna and her team found what remained of a tree village used by a group of local Earthborn resistors. Families who had fled early Coalition strikes and survived hidden for years. The Coalition had found them. No soldiers left behind. No survivors among the civilians. Children, elders, gone. Reyna knelt in the ash, eyes burning, rage tightening her throat. These weren't just casualties. This was a message. They knew we were protecting them, Kanoa whispered, fists clenched. "They want to break us," Tala added. "Emotionally." Reyna stared into the ruin. "Then we don't break. We break them." It became personal. Each Ghost Viper felt a shift. Not just strategy now, but vengeance, tempered with purpose. They would no longer just defend. They would dismantle. From the inside out, the plan began with a whisper. Zeta 5 supply routes depended on drone, relay towers, scattered through the deeper parts of the jungle. Few were manned. Most relied on solar power and internal navigation. But each tower fed back to the core grid. Take them down, and their entire system would collapse. Reyna and Mira took the first. It was guarded by one technician and an automated turret. They waited until a storm rolled through, lightning cracking the sky, rain battering the trees. Under the cover of chaos, Reyna climbed the tower while Mira jammed the turret's motion sensors. One cut, one drop. The system blinked offline. By dawn, 3 towers were down. By the end of the week, 7. Vaylor raged. Coalition camps doubled security. Resources spread thinner. Morale plummeted. And the jungle kept breathing. But Reyna knew something was coming. Something more. She saw it in the silence. Birds stopped calling. Frogs stopped croaking. Even the insects seemed to pause. Nature wasn't just alert. It was warning. Then the sky cracked open again. Not a full invasion, but a drop ship. Sleek, black, its frame humming with energy. From it descended an elite squad, unlike the others. Smaller, quieter, dressed in obsidian armor that shifted tones with the environment. Not bulky, elegant, purpose-built for assassination. Vaylor had called in the Shadowborn, legends among the Coalition. They were said to be genetically modified, designed for silent elimination. No witnesses, no hesitation. Reyna watched them from a hollowed tree trunk, heart steady. These weren't soldiers. They were predators. She signaled retreat. Her team fell back to a deeper zone, territory marked by ruins older than any city. Vines draped over stone temples. Moss-coated stairwells led into the earth. No maps here. No light. Just memory. "This is our last sanctuary," Reyna told them. "We hold them here." The Ghost Vipers fortified the ruins with everything they had. Booby traps, false tunnels, collapsible pathways. They memorized every corridor, every echo. When the Shadowborn came, they didn't charge. They seeped in like smoke. It began with silence. Then, one by one, Ghost Vipers went dark. No screams. No signs. Just absence. Reyna's world narrowed. She moved alone through the underground maze, her senses sharpened to a razor edge. She could feel them behind her, feel their breath in the air, cold and deliberate. She was the last line now. She reached the central chamber, heart pounding. Carvings glowed faintly in the torchlight, symbols of Earth's forgotten gods, symbols of strength. There, she waited. The first Shadowborn emerged like liquid shadow. Reyna didn't hesitate. She struck. It was not a fight of brute force. It was survival distilled into dance. Blade against blade. Breath against breath. She was not faster, not stronger, but she knew the terrain. And she had something they didn't: grief, purpose, fury. She moved like the jungle. Silent, relentless. The Shadowborn fell. More followed. By the end, Reyna stood alone, bloody but breathing. The chamber silent again. Outside, dawn broke. The jungle had held. Reyna limped into the light. Scarred but standing. Around her, survivors emerged from hiding, eyes wide with hope and sorrow. They had lost much, but they had not lost everything. And somewhere in the trees, birds sang again. Reyna looked to the sky, and for the first time in months, it didn't seem so heavy. The war was not over, but the tide had shifted, and the jungle still remembered how to fight. Smoke curled to the canopy like a serpent in prayer, soft and slow and laced with ash. The ruins were silent now, soaked in memories and blood, but Reyna crew stood at their edge, unwilling to let stillness turn into surrender. She had survived the Shadowborn, barely, but survival wasn't victory, not yet. The jungle had held because it was home, because it was ancient, because they had fought like it was sacred. Now the real war began. The coalition had grown cautious. Where before they advanced with arrogance, now they deployed scouts in packs and rarely camped longer than 12 hours in one place. But even their caution betrayed them. Fear slowed them. Suspicion bred mistakes. Reyna knew they were unraveling, even if Valor wouldn't admit it. She watched one of their convoys from the shadow of a broken trunk, eyes narrowed. 8 armored transports snaked through a recently cut path, surrounded by drones that buzzed like angry flies. Each step they took flattened more of the world around them. But the land fought back in whispers, roots tripping machines, vines tearing antennae, animals screaming warnings. And in those moments, Reyna saw the jungle not just as ally, but as soul, as ancestor. They weren't alone. They never had been. They're running out of water. Myra's voice crackled through the headset. Thermal scans show increased dehydration symptoms across 3 battalions. Reyna smirked. Good. Also, Mira added, they're burning the bodies now, even their own. No more graves, just fire. Reyna's smirk faded. She hated what that meant. The Shadowborn had unnerved them so deeply they feared even their dead. That was power, but it was also desperation. And desperation made people dangerous. Later that night, Kanoa returned with word of a new facility. Hidden, deep, experimental. Not a base. A lab. One that hadn't existed on any previous maps. I saw the lights underground, he said, breath ragged. Saw them unloading crates. Big ones. Cryo-sealed. Reyna's heart tightened. Weapons. Kanoa shook his head. Maybe, but they glowed. Faint like bioenergy. I think they're trying to merge tech with something they found. Something local. The implication was chilling. The Coalition had always treated Earth's wilds like inconveniences, not mysteries. But what if that had changed? What if the jungle had finally scared them enough to try taming it? Reyna called a council that night. In the heart of an ancient grove where trees curled like cathedral pillars, the surviving ghost vipers gathered. Faces worn, eyes fierce. Tala, Kanoa, Mira, and Naya, all warriors now scarred with stories. Each carried pain, each carried fire. We have one chance, Reyna said. We strike the lab, take whatever they're building and destroy it. We scatter their notes. We make sure they can't replicate this anywhere else. They'll protect it with everything. Naya said, it's their future. Then we show them it's not. Reyna replied, we remind them whose world this is. It took 6 days to plan. They scouted every tunnel, mapped every heat source. Mira rigged a signal cloaker from scrap and solar panels. Tala carved a new series of traps that would only trigger under synthetic weight. Machine feet, not human ones. They prepared not just for battle, but for a message. This wasn't sabotage anymore. It was justice. On the seventh night, they moved. The lab was built into a cliffside near the edge of a blackwater lake, its entrance disguised by vines and camouflage netting. The air shimmered with drone signals, lasers too faint for the human eye. But the jungle had taught them patience. They didn't rush. Reyna led from front, slipping between gaps in the shield line. Every step calculated. Her team followed like ghosts. No word spoken, only breath. The first breach was silent. Tala disabled the outer sensor relay with a vine-wrapped blade, slicing its power supply in a single motion. Mira overrode the backup pulse using a hacked fragment of coalition code. Doors opened without alarm. Inside it was cold, too cold for the jungle. A sterile, humming unease clung to every wall. Enric covered their rear, watching shadows like a hawk. The deeper they went, the stranger became, walls pulsing faintly, as though alive. They found the cryo crates in a chamber lit by soft blue. Inside one, something stirred. Not a weapon, a creature. Vine limb translucent but unmistakably breathing. And not struggling. They're cloning them, Mira whispered. Or hybridizing. This isn't tech. It's adaptation. Bio-war, Reyna muttered. They're trying to turn the jungle against itself. The horror settled in like smoke. A guard rounded the corner. Naya took him down with a single shot, silenced. More came. The silence broke. Suddenly, the whole lab was an echo chamber of boots and gunfire. The ghost vipers moved as one. Each hallway became a funnel, each corner a trap. Mira activated the cloaker again, temporarily freezing the facility's internal sensors. Tala rigged explosives at every choke point, but it was Reyna who reached the central console. Her fingers flew across the interface. Coalition script scrolled, encrypted and stubborn. She input sequence after sequence, sweat trailing down her spine. Then the files opened. What were they doing? Kanoa yelled from across the hall. Reyna read quickly, heart hammering. They're trying to map neural patterns of jungle predators into AI templates. Combine instinct with programming. Create soldiers that think like the wild. Hunt like it. Kill like it. Kanoa paled. They want to become us. No, Reyna said coldly. They want to erase us. She hit delete. The screen pulsed red. Security locks disengaged. Doors slid open. Floodlights roared to life. But so did the failsafe. An automated defense sequence activated. Turrets dropped from the ceiling. Drones deployed from recessed alcoves, and a countdown appeared on the screen. 5 minutes. They've rigged the core to blow if tampered, Mira said. They'd rather destroy it than let us win. Then let them, Reyna said. They grabbed what they could, data shards, samples, records, and ran. Fire followed. As they emerged into the night, the cliffside lab lit up behind them. A wave of heat chased them into the underbrush. The shock wave rolled across the lake, scattering birds into the sky like ash. The facility was gone, and with it, the Coalition's most dangerous secret. Reyna collapsed beneath a fig tree, lungs burning, hands shaking. Mira knelt beside her, blood streaking her temple. We did it, Mira breathed. Reyna nodded. But it's not over. And it wasn't. The next morning, Coalition ships circled above. Not one or two, dozens. Vaylor's voice crackled across abandoned frequencies. You may think this is a victory. It's not. You have delayed the inevitable. But Earth does not belong to you. It belongs to the future. And we are that future. Reyna turned off the signal. He still doesn't get it. What now? Kanoa asked. She looked at the jungle around them, at the trees breathing, at the creatures returning to song. Her voice was quiet but unshaken. We don't fight to win. We fight so they never forget why they lost. And the jungle, listening, seemed to agree. The rain didn't come with warning. It fell like the jungle weeping, heavy, relentless, unbothered by fire or ash. Reyna stood in the deluge, her face turned skyward, eyes open. The earth beneath her was scorched, still smoking from the lab's explosion. Trees on the perimeter had begun to bow, their edges blackened by heat, but still rooted in defiance. The storm made no distinction between survivor or invader. It just fell, as it always had, washing away blood and memory alike. But not everything could be cleansed. Across the clearing, Mira and Kanoa patched together a signal transmitter from wreckage. Naya stood watch, her rifle slung and her gaze distant. They had all changed. The past weeks had stripped away any softness. Even the way they moved had shifted, more silent, more certain. The jungle had shaped them, but war had carved them. Reyna didn't need to say it aloud, but the words found her anyway. This is the last stand. Kanoa glanced up from the comms. You think they're coming all at once? She nodded. Valor won't scatter anymore. He'll come himself. He wants to make an example of us. And we'll give him one, Naya said, voice low. One they won't forget. At nightfall, they met in the ruins of an ancient temple, long overtaken by roots and moss. It had no roof, no statues left, only the whisper of past prayers in the cracked stone. It was the perfect place to prepare for something sacred. Reyna laid out the map, drawn in charcoal and blood. Every remaining hideout, every choke point, every known coalition drop zone. They had one chance, not to win, but to remind the galaxy why Earth was never meant to be conquered. We can't beat their numbers, she said plainly. But we don't have to. She tapped her finger on the map center. We draw them in. We let them think they're hunting us. Then we bleed them dry in the vines, in the fog, in their sleep. Tala tightened her knife strap. Guerrilla tactics like before? No, Reyna replied. Not guerrilla. Not shadows. We make them feel us. Make them remember every step that cost them blood. They scattered that night, like seeds on the wind, each to their position. Silence returned, but it was a silence before a storm. Not calm, but tension wrapped in air. The next morning, the sky cracked open with thunder, not from clouds, but engines. Coalition dropships descended like silver fangs, precise and endless. Mechs followed, plodding metallic feet that shook the forest floor. Drones blackened the air like locusts. Valor stepped out of the lead vessel, his armor sleek, untouched by dirt or grief. His face was human enough, but there was nothing human in his eyes. He carried a pulse rifle that gleamed with stolen minerals. His voice, broadcast across the jungle, was cold steel. You have one chance. Lay down your arms. Submit, and I will allow you to live in containment. Reyna's reply was swift. A spear, carved from jungle bone, pierced the transmission relay at the center of the clearing. Sparks erupted. The screen cracked. Silence fell. Then all hell followed. From the canopy, the ghost vipers rained fury. Explosives disguised as bird nests. Snare traps pulling soldiers into trees. Flooded trenches swallowing mechs in bog mud. Every inch of the jungle became a weapon. Every second, a reckoning. Reyna moved like wind between trees, striking from shadow, never lingering. Her blade found metal necks and alien throats alike. Mira, from above, hacked into the enemy's aerial system, turning drones against each other midair. Kanoa ignited fire lines soaked in sap and flint. creating walls of living flame that herded the invaders like cattle. They didn't expect resistance this coordinated, this furious. Within hours, Valor lost his front lines. By nightfall, a third of his forces were dead, but so were many of the Ghost Vipers. Tal was gone, and Rick too. Sacrifices that burned more than any wound. Reyna didn't allow grief yet. Not until it was over. Valor adapted. He brought out sonic displacers, devices that disoriented sound and balance. The jungle trembled under their frequency. Trees wilted. Birds fell mid-flight. For a moment, even Reyna stumbled. But the earth itself rose. In their haste, the coalition had unearthed something they couldn't control. The very roots of the jungle began to move, slow, ancient, coiling through cracks of machines, snapping circuits, crushing armored legs. It wasn't magic. It was memory. The land remembered violence and rejected it. Reyna found herself facing Valor at the altar ruins, beneath the bleeding light of 2 moons. Rain had returned, mingling with smoke. His armor was scorched, his breath ragged, but his weapon steady. "You should have accepted extinction," he said, raising his rifle. Reyna didn't flinch. "We're not extinct. We're wild." And as he pulled the trigger, the jungle moved. A root, massive what with sap, shot up between them, deflecting the blast. Reyna charged through the steam, her blade finding the gap in Valor's armor at his side. He fell, not like a tyrant, but like a man too far from home. She stood over him as the pulsed rifle clattered away. His eyes widened, not in pain, but realization. "You weren't fighting alone," he gasped. "No," she said softly. "I never was." By morning, the coalition had retreated. Not all were dead. Some fled into the skies. Some were captured. But none remained who dared fire another shot. In the aftermath, the Ghost Vipers buried their dead with leaves, not stones. Names were whispered into roots. Grief didn't shout here, it sang. Quiet, steady, eternal. Reyna stood again at the edge of the cliff, watching mist rise from the trees. Mira approached, her arm in a sling, but her gaze steady. "We won." Reyna shook her head. "No, we reminded them. And if they come again, we'll be waiting. We always have been." The jungle breathed around them. Now, if you followed the story to the end, if you felt the fire, the fear, the fight, know this: resistance isn't just rebellion. It's love. Love for what must never be lost. The earth is not just soil and shadow. It's story. And stories do not die. Let this story inspire your own fight. Whatever jungle you stand in, whatever enemy you face, remember what lives beneath your feet. Memory, strength, the power to rise again. If this journey moved you, share it. Carry it forward. Like, comment. Let your voice be another vine in the canopy. And never forget, some battles are not fought for victory. They are fought so no one forgets that we were here, and that we mattered,